Good afternoon and welcome to today's South West RTPI webinar on how digital technologies can be used to promote positive planning. I'm chairing today and I'm Julie O'Rourke, a Senior Planner at WIG, which is part of Tetra Tech, and I'm Junior Vice Chair of the RTPI South West Regional Activities Committee, which means that in 2022 I will be the Regional Chair. The RTPI Regional Activities Committee seeks to promote planning across South West through CPD, events, newsletters and awards, and we seek to make a positive difference to all planners and to influence emerging policy. Additionally, we work closely and support the young planner groups to deliver events aimed at people within the first 10 years of their careers. The purpose of the webinar today is to explore the increased emphasis in the white paper planners to utilise digital technologies, which should lead to planners spending more time planning and to ultimately deliver more housing. Through this webinar, we will explore the positives of digital technology and we'll look at some examples, and we will look at whether digital technologies could result in a situation where more people will get involved in planning. Will it make it more inclusive? Will we be able to reach more people who don't normally engage? Or should this be seen as an additional tool which could be used alongside more traditional approaches of consultation? Will it give neighbourhoods and communities an earlier, more meaningful engagement and voice in the future of their areas as plans are made? Will harnessing digital technology make it much easier to access and understand information about planning proposals? Will it lead to more engagement at the local plan phase and ultimately less objections at the examinations in public, which in turn would speed up the planning system? I hope that we can also explore the potential pitfalls of increased digital technology. Who could lose out with increased digitalisation? Could it be the communities or the planners themselves? So before our presentations, I should make you aware of some housekeeping. As delegates, you've all been muted. If you have any questions, please send your questions via the question box in the Go To panel, which may be on your right-hand side of your screen or towards the top of your screen. The speakers' presentations will run for approximately 45 minutes before we come to question and answer session. Any questions not answered will be considered after the session and answers emailed to all participants, so please ask questions. A copy of the presentation will be included as a handout for you to download from the Go To webinar panel towards the end of the session. If you personally lose connection during the session, then please try rejoining via the link sent by Go To webinar, and you might need to turn off Wi-Fi or any other technology using your Wi-Fi, as it might slow up the connection. And if speakers lose connectivity, please wait in the webinar and keep an eye on your emails in case you need to relaunch a session with a new link. I'm hoping it won't happen, especially during a webinar about the positives of digital technology, but you never know. Now, I'm pleased to introduce our speakers, which represent the private sector and academic viewpoint and the local planning authority view. Our speakers are my colleague, Paul Labbett, architect, head of studio at WIG, who will be talking about virtual consultations. The second speaker is Dr. Reyhaneh from the Cambridge Centre for Housing and Planning Research. And Dr. Ray's presentation is on how could better use of data and digital technologies improve the planning system. And finally, we have Jessica Vaughan from Plymouth City Council. And Jess will be talking about how the council uses crowdfunding platforms to allocate SIL funds. At this point, I'm going to hand you over to Paul Labbett for the first of 3 presentations. I really hope you enjoy this seminar. I'll be back after the presentations for the questions and answers. So over to you, Paul, and thank you.
Hi, right, there's a tiny bit of delay in the control of the slides. There we go. So I'm Paul Labbett. I lead the studio at WIG. Our studio comprises our architects, landscape architects, master planners, technicians, technologists, urban designers, and visualizers, so quite a broad group. I'm here because our current work includes developing a virtual consultation platform to support public engagement where physical attendance isn't possible. Right, so we've been doing this for a little while. It does echo the notes in the white paper So digital is a thread that runs through the white paper, and the points that relate to the work that we've been doing is engagement, access and understanding, relevant technologies in terms of the kind of lowest common denominator of technology, and the driver for change has been COVID-19. Dr. Reyhaneh is going to go through, I think, more of the detail on this white paper. I'm just going to focus on the emerging tools for public consultation, and this will be based on our own research, experience of developing consultations, some ongoing project work, and other examples in the field. Okay. So a quick image of one of our sites. We started looking for a solution when we moved into COVID-19 lockdown. We had a number of ongoing commissions that required us to deliver public consultations, specifically as part of our portfolio of work for the town deal sort of projects. And so we needed to work out how to progress. So we had a challenge with a sort of task. Also, our project teams in our town planning, urban design, and transport disciplines, they had the same need. So they brought together examples for us of other virtual consultations that were out there as a starting point to work out what we could do, what we could build on it, and what it meant for not only for our offering, but to solve our issue. We reviewed the different types out there, and I'll show some in a minute. The initial ones we saw were sort of simple 2D sort of image offerings that linked up collections of materials to form simple websites, not particularly sort of interactive, but they served the need. They're relatively sort of simple to access. The 3D examples that we viewed were more akin to the kind of Google Street View sort of technology. So, but early on in the process, the examples that we saw were kind of proofs of concept or demos, because there were very few actual live examples that we found out there, and I'll ping up one of them in a minute. We then created our own demo hub for a webinar series that the WIG planners and various other colleagues were running through the summer. So that was quite useful as a sort of test case to sort of focus our webinar recordings and just have sort of people visit and run through and then practice with. And the exhibition element was the easier piece, whereas the consultation bit is been something that's been developing over time. And what we found is that from our personal experience of consultation events, it's the interaction with people and the public, and how to explain the proposals, which is the key piece. The exhibition piece is fairly sort of easy, but at the moment it's the understanding of how you consult backwards and forwards, I think, is developing in the area. So that's a bit of chat about things in terms of the technical things. It's they're very relatively simple sort of website constructions. They're a series of files. They need a place to store it online, and an address. And so there's a bit of back office things that we've managed to sort of put together. It's fairly sort of simple fare, but it's a key sort of requirement. When we say 3D as well, they're not actually 3D. Typically, they are 360-degree panoramic images. So they're flat images, and what the flat images mean that they can be manipulated relatively easy on kind of low data devices. So because the machines that are viewing aren't generating anything, so they're not creating or calculating, they're just bringing up an image. It's quite quick, it's quite low data, and it lends itself to mobile phone platforms, which are much more accessible. Typically, the consultations are images that may or may not be linked together that let you hang artifacts in place, and that's the bit that gives more of the sort of kind of intuitive feel of an exhibition. And again, I'll show some examples. The software out there at the moment, lots of the examples are developed using Marzipano, which is a free piece of software. We've been using 3D Vista, which is which are paid for. It's about sort of £500 for a couple of seats, just to give you a scale. So it's not sort of big budget, but it's typically been used more for the shops and museums and various things like that to actually sort of progress and show exhibits. We've got feedback at the moment. It's currently been on forms, live text chat feeds, which can be used to store the transcripts of your conversations. The online forms themselves can be used to tabulate the responses, so it very rapidly sort of builds up a database of the responses without manual manipulation. And the emerging sort of things are the video conferencing elements, and it's trying to get those a bit more kind of intuitive so that you can form smaller groups offline rather than a presentation like this, which is a bit more ordered. If we go to a few examples though, if I can go back here a second. So here we go. So this example was one of the first ones that we viewed. It's from an actual existing public consultation that was held. And excuse me if it's a little bit slow on the kind of thing, because I've got a slight delay on the control. So this is an Arab piece that was done for a large road scheme. So what they actually did is they held the public consultation, and then they've used Marzipano to create a single 360 panorama that they've hung all the various artifacts on, which you can then sort of hop into and view in more detail. So it's a way, I believe, that they've extended the length of their consultation, and it's a record of the existing presentation. It predates COVID-19, and it's quite neat and tidy, nice big sort of icons. But this is an example of you show the things and you put a button on, and then the button lets you zoom in. It works really well on a PC or a larger sort of format. Not quite so good on mobile devices, but I would assume that they've kind of moved forward with their offering since the original. And now this is where it gets a bit more difficult, trying to get back to the original. Sorry about that. Charlotte, can you get back to that slide? Right, okay. The second quick example is one which I'll just do that. Is a fairly sort of standard response. Again, there's something, it's our colleagues at ACOM that are doing it. So it's a standard rendered. So this isn't a real place. This has been created in the model and rendered as a virtual environment. It's a static point and lets you spin around. Again, it's created in Marzipano. It highlights the artifacts. You tick on them, you zoom in. This one is a little bit kind of newer. It's an example from America. But it works sort of better on the mobile devices. So it's just an example of things are moving on. Stylistically, they've rendered it in a quite sort of shiny, high level way and put real sort of people in for that. But again, it's an exhibition format of all the standard things that you would expect to see in a public consultation. And I think there's also a feedback form on this one. So it's a bit more progress, but again, it's a static sort of single point. Again, Charlotte, I think we'll have to do back to it. Okay, we've been looking at similar things. Again, if we can get into this. Okay, so again, this is the same text. So these are just rendered sort of panoramic images. And another way of doing it is you basically create a series of points within a model and actually put your artifacts in that and let people navigate. I think depending on the sort of different clients and different people that are sort of visiting, some people like the simple stand in the middle review thing. Some people like the way that one can explore and view the different things. Again, it's still very much is looking to replicate the experience of being in the room, and so the boards themselves, and the difference in this one is you click on the things rather than the icons. So whether it's more intuitive or not, and then zoom in or out to suit what you want to view. Whether it's kind of more intuitive, I don't really know, but we decided that actually we wanted to use this as a method of making people sort of engage and explore a little bit more in their environment. We also included in these ones live text feedback. So we've had colleagues in this one and various of the live ones we run at set times being at the end of the live text, so people can ask specific sort of questions within set time frames and have direct feedback. That's some of the other things that actually you can get, I think, in these that you probably can't do in physical things. Is it's relatively easy to generate sort of three-dimensional models that you can interrogate much cheaper basically than having this kind of thing in a real event. So I think we are seeing more people actually putting more digital content in that isn't a straight comparison to the real, because it's not the same. The key thing that we were working through as well is to try and make these work on phones, because actually the interaction with the phone seemed to be more beneficial to more people, so you can have the same presentation with a slightly different sort of wrapper, so that if you engage on a laptop you get one thing, if you engage it on a phone you get another viewpoint. It does need to be accessible to more people, so some people won't like the maneuvering around, and for various of those people we can just put a a simple sort of list on, so that they can interact with the information in another manner. I'll leave this one because it's not actually sort of moving as smoothly as I kind of wanted to. So those are some of the kind of the ways you can do it. Where's the where next? What we found in the last 6 months of doing these things is how do you make it more accessible? We've got things on the phone. I think we're still developing this sort of more intuitive sort of pictograms and various things to control the consultation, but they're much more focused on the probably the younger people. If you're older, it might be sort of more difficult. So how do we make it sort of simpler in terms of the the screen interaction, tablets and things? So that's the thing that sort of we're pushing through. Obviously, in terms of partially sighted, it's easier because all of these have got zoom function that lets you zoom in. But I think we're still finding that designers that we're working with are developing boards as if they were the boards that they're putting in the room, rather than actually something which is slightly different because you've got more scope. Interaction between people at the event, what we're still missing, I think, at the moment is the opportunity to just know that there's someone on attendance and you can have a conversation in a sidebar that is a video conversation. So some people like going into the text, some people would prefer a sort of video. So it's those kind of more intuitive meeting rooms, so you can just both go to a meeting room and then from a text thing drop straight into a video conversation. And that's things that we're looking at putting in now. How do you use this to extend the overall time frame of a sort of a consultation, whether it's be it number of days? So is it, rather than a day, is it 2 weeks? Is it out of hours? How do you sort of support all of those things? And these tools do lend themselves to that. And how do we generally add the opportunity in these kind of events to explain the proposals better? So some of the things that we're putting into the live events now are things like video walkthrough of the site, where you put the proposed building in that's just embedded in the consultation. Now you can run that as a TV screen in a physical sort of meeting, but from that movie, we can then move into sort of VR sort of applications. But then you then everything you move in terms of the tech can then take you away from making it accessible to all. So it's just drawing that kind of line between explaining to more people. I think that's our kind of challenge. So very much what next? It's been a bit of a canter through quite a lot of work. And hopefully I've not overstepped my 15 minutes. For my final slide, we've been using more of the QR codes just to put into things, because then you can put your phone up to it, and it just takes you to a sort of to a site, to a piece of information. And as I've walked around my various places, I haven't actually seen yet a planning notice wrapped around a lamppost that's got one of these on, but that's the kind of tech that actually, if you put it on a planning notice, if you've got your phone, you can look at the QR code straight to seeing the proposals, which might get more buy-in from the people, rather than a sort of a soggy piece of paper sort of wrapped around a lamppost. But anyway, that's me as a resident and an architect. So I think Julie, that's me, a very quick canter through. And now this is where the text sort of breaks down. Right, and on to Dr. Ray.
Hi, I'm from Cambridge Centre for Housing and Planning, and there are numerous research conducting in our centre, including planning policies, housing, affordable housing, and transformation and construction and housing transformation through the digital technologies and offsite manufacturing. I put a link on some of the slides that related to the report, and if you are interested to that topic, you can look at later. I want to talk about how could better use of data and digital technologies improve the planning system. Next slide. The key issues is that I like to work on and talk on is what are the critical issues facing the planning system, and which of these issues could be solved by digital solution. To what extent is the current planning system digitized? How could be improved? And what are the beneficial benefits? What are the concerns on the wider use of data and digitalization in the UK planning system? And at the end, I'll talk about what are the disadvantages of digital technology adoption and how we can overcome that. Next slide. As you can see that I believe that most of you are familiar with the UK planning system. But I should note that the current this is the current system, and planning for the future proposed a major overhaul of the system. But the key issues in the triangle remain the same. Campbell identified the planner triangles and said that planners have to ensure the realization of these conflicting priorities, social justice, economic growth, and environmentally friendly policies. The UK planning system is a led plan system, which means that the decisions of planning applications should be made in accordance with the adopted development plan, unless there are the material consideration that may indicate otherwise. It's a really complex system, and it's engaged with different actors and levels and individual into a multi-scalar policy framework. Next slide. But the thing is, you already heard a lot of criticism on our planning system, which is slow, complex, costly, and untransparent. It's vital to note that there is a plethora of problems in the UK planning system. However, digital technologies only could tackle some of them. The current planning system is onerous, particularly when there are delays, appeals, or negotiation costs between the local planning authorities and the developer. There is lack of skill between the public authorities. There is a lack of up-to-date plans as well. In 2017, 34 local authorities in England hadn't published a local plan for consultation, and only 1/3 had done so since the National Planning Policy Framework was adopted in 2012. Planning is a very slow process. It can take roughly 9 months to produce an evidence base, although this varies across the local planning authorities. It takes between 4 to 7 hours to just process a typical household planning applications. The planning system also suffers from a lack of consistency across local areas. The National Policy Framework provides general guidance for the elaboration of local plans, but it doesn't specify that requirements on the detailed evidence which needs to be provided in a planning process. In some places, it can lead to then over creation of documents, while some local planning authorities produce around 10 evidence base, the other might produce 20 provide 20 evidence. This also contributes to the fragmentation of data between different local planning authorities and prevents the creation of a common evidence base. There is also little transparency on data about land ownership, control, or interest of the land. The fact that such data which are not available for all makes it difficult to identify precisely which sites may be suited for housing development. Next slide. To what extent our planning system is digitalized? I should say that only have basic digital tools in place, such as planning portal and for e-submissions, and now 90% of applicants submit their application online. But it's not a fully digitalized process. Firstly, because it's a very person-centered process, ill-suited for sharing and not aggregation of data. And the last one is not coordinated between different actors. These are what we really face in our planning system. And next slide, please. But the data usage, that's how we use data in planning system in a different stage of the process. The plan making process is based on the use of data on local needs collected through local authority surveys. The data is aggregated and analyzed to formulate policies in the local plan and evidence-based surveys, such as on demographics, household growth projections, current needs for affordable housing, or amount of land available, which are conducted by professionals, either in local planning authority or external private consultation. In planning application process, MHCLG now currently publish time series statistic on planning application and the decision on plannings for residential developments and reinforcement activities as a live table. However, data is not always available to the public, which makes the planning application system sometimes obscure. For instance, after debate over whether MHCLG should open up the land registry, which contains information of the land use and information or private, the government announced in 2016 that the land registry wouldn't be privatized. However, HM land registry still charge fees for any application or transaction, while necessities registration, land or lease. In site search and appraisal process, this process requires gathering large quantity of information, planning history, heritage, environmental constraints such as flood risk, and but such data is not coordinated and integrated in single data set. The site search process is usually operated by land agents, surveyors, or planning consultants, and is still largely a manual process which makes little use of digital tools. And plan monitoring process, the last one, is the one of the least digitalized stages of the whole planning process, and there is a little innovation in it. Next slide. But we are expected benefits of digitization of the planning system. The use of digital tools can improve transparency, efficiency, and allow cost and time saving. And it should say that benefits are expected at every stage of the planning process. Site search and appraisal, for example, it's allow us to integrate data in single platforms, coordinate stakeholders. For plan monitoring, it allows more accurate assessment of outcomes, make data more accessible. And for public consultation, digital platforms can encourage community involvement and make planning information more visual and accessible. As you know, although urban planning has an impact on wide variety of sectors, the UK planning system is organized in department silos. Digitalization can break down such planning silos, for instance, by integrating a wide diversity of challenges on the same digital planning platform. More than just visualization tools, I mean more than just such land insight or urban intelligence. This would allow identify areas with cross-sector planning issues, and it could enable different policy goals to be tackled simultaneously around through and is for the better and more efficient understanding of their interdependency, such as housing and health, transport and local economy, existing infrastructure and industrial heritage, etc. Also, digitalization can foster communication and collaboration at every stage of planning process between different stakeholders, such as planner, architects, local planning authorities, and local businesses, in a domain where communication is key but often missing. Sharing data can allow more holistic, multi-dimensional and multi-scalar approach to the planning system. Much of already written about the role of data in natural disaster resilience, particularly in cities often exposed to flood or other natural hazards, focusing on special data and software such as geographic information system or special data infrastructure. I think it's important to know about that in 2012, the World Bank launched the Open Cities project in order to create open data ecosystem that will facilitate innovative data-driven urban planning and disaster risk management. Next slide. Okay, then I talk a lot about the how wonderful the digitalization of planning system would be, but it should be noted that digitalization is not a cheap and quick solution. For many years now, planning has been under-resourced. We need to ask planners to learn a new set of skills that are perhaps not being taught in their professional courses. So upskilling, time, resources, and investment are required. It also requires embedding in professional courses, and we can't expect that planners overnight can learn completely new skill set around digital technology. For example, they are suddenly going to become expert in AI or machine learning. And so we have to accept this is not an it's not an instant and overnight solution. It's a solution that requires investment of time and resources. There are different stakeholders involved in planning. It's not just about upskilling planners. Each house builders have to engage this process. Local people have to engage this process. Counselors have to be engaged, and the planning system is full of different actors at the different level of skills and expertise. The point that I want to mention is that digital innovation is not a silver bullet, and it won't fix all of our problems. I think it's a critical point that we should bear in mind that it will help certain specific issues, better data management, better mapping, but it won't necessarily help with certain other issues that have been in planning system over decades. The key points that we should know that is a long process, and it can't be happen overnight. We need to acknowledge that we are a long way away from in terms of process, administrative system, in terms of skills. But you know, it's a very good aspiration goal. It needs, but we need to accept that it will take time, resources, and and upskilling, and it's required all actors' efforts. However, in this journey, there are many constraints still in our planning system, in our society, to update digital innovation and take advantage of the benefits. Next slide. There are different constraints on the wider use of data and digitalization in the UK planning system. I don't have time to go in detail. I just quickly mentioned the headings. The centralization of the UK planning system it's a very complex challenge and make this uptake of digital data and digitalization very difficult. The wider uptake of digital tools in the planning system is hampered by issues of data collection, ownership, and data privacy. Data privacy is very important for the majority, is a concern for the majority of citizens, but is also a major challenges for the planning professions because of conflicting objectives of transparency imperative and data privacy. And whether it's for the planning process or the planning application process, digitizing the planning system can be time-consuming and costly. Some software of digital tools are difficult to develop, and local planning authority might lack of resources to buy for themselves. Resistance to change, I think, is not just for the planning system. It's maybe occur for every changing from the traditional way to the digital way, but for the planning system, because it's the replacement of human-based decision by the AI, could generate resistance. And regarding the digital technologies and innovations available for our planning system, is not like a integrated or in the like a one coordinated in one platform. Is very scattered and uncoordinated innovation. It's another problem. I don't have time, but I want to mention two more things that it's good to note very quickly. Next slide. One thing that we have to aware of digital divide as well. One of the 8 million people in the UK who don't use the internet, and 90% also suffer from the other economic or social disadvantages. Even before the COVID-19, digital exclusion was a reality for a fifth of the UK's population. And digital exclusion is a new form of social deprivation, separated and make the existing lines of inequality and poverty worse. And as the world gets smarter, the divide gets wider. Then the thing is that if we think about to digitalize the process, we need to think about who exclude, who include, and how we can include all the people from different, from the whole society. Next slide, please. And for the last, I just want to tell you that there is a solution that we need to talk about stakeholder engagement when we talk about digitalization. Identify stakeholders and choose an appropriate approach for stakeholder engagement. I don't have time to go through this, but I put a link on one of our recent report in our center. That's the national guidance for stakeholder engagement. Thank you. And I hand over to Jessica.
Thank you, Dr. Reyhaneh. Now we'll hand over to Jessica Vaughan from Plymouth City Council.
Hi everyone, thanks Julie for inviting me today to talk to you about Plymouth City Change Fund, which is the project we use to distribute the neighbourhood portion of SIL using crowdfunder technology. It's not a new project, it's currently in its 6th year, and it's also award winning as well. So we won the Silver Jubilee Cup last year at the RTPI Awards, and last year also won the Engaged Cities Award as well on an international scale. So the other cities that won were Flint, Michigan and San Francisco. So it's not a new project. but it's been hugely successful, and it's great that it's been really well received. So today I haven't got a lot of time, so I'm just going to quickly go through how it all began and why we decided to distribute money this way, how we set up the project, the process for us. I was going to give you some numbers as well, so you can see the impact the project is having on local people and using crowdfunded technology, and some case studies, why we think it's such a success, some lessons learned, and the next steps as well. So how did it all begin? So it started 5.5 years ago. The council has and still has budget issues, and we wanted to create a process which didn't require additional resource. And at the same time, there's a lack of funding in the voluntary and community sector, and a want for us to empower our citizens to come up with solutions to local problems that they had. And also to engage our partners as well. The project has been set up in partnership with Crowdfunding UK, who have been really great to work with. Crowdfunding was seen as a potential solution to this problem. It's time, it's cost effective, it's digital, there's no paperwork to it. So that was seen as a problem, and also a chance to see something new and exciting as well, to do something new. At the time, we were the first council to start distributing funds in this way. And at the same time we were having these conversations, was the same time that the community infrastructure levy was being introduced. As you most probably all know, 85% of that needs to go into roads and schools and the big things that keep a city or a place running. And there's that 15% that needs to go back into the local community to help address demands that development places on an area. And it's that 15% that we distribute through Crowdfunder. So why did we decide to distribute money? The main thing, as I mentioned, is about putting power back into the local community. And it also shows proof of public buy-in as well, and without us having to do lots and lots of consultation. So we only pledge on projects that hit 25%. And we take that 25% as proof that the public want that project to happen. So the way it's been set up is really streamlined and really easy to understand for the public. Because it's online, because it's a digital platform, it allows for that transparency and quick decisions. Everything is made in the public domain, and it's very obvious because our pledge just appears on a project or it doesn't. Genuine citizen engagement. We really wanted to ensure that we were kind of not limiting projects, so there's no minimum that we can pledge on a project. The smallest pledge we've ever made is £250, and the maximum is 20,000, or that's the biggest pledge we've ever made. And a small pledge can make a really big impact in the community as well. It's not necessarily about the money, it's kind of getting that status, doing it in the public domain. And also as well, a lot of people don't need a lot of money to get something really good going. So it's great that we haven't set that minimum pledge as well. And we also don't veto any of the projects that go on the platform. Anybody, an individual, an organisation, anyone can put the project up and can get a fair shot at trying to get some of the money that's available. As I mentioned, it's admin light through technology, and also as well, it allows more money to be allocated for projects. So we haven't had to, for example, hire somebody to help administer this fund. It's kind of done within officer time because it is so light touch, and it allows more money to be allocated for the projects. So when we were setting this up, it was quite clear that we wanted some really strong criteria and priorities. There's legal requirements that we need to meet for the fund, so it needs to go on to develop it, as I mentioned, addressing demands that development places on the city. And also as well, we were writing the Plymouth plan at the time, so it was a way of kind of realigning our priorities. We made sure there was a lot of political support and a lot of consultation with councillors, particularly the portfolio holder at the time, because we know they're the people within our communities seeing these projects happen, and we knew that they could be really good ambassadors for the fund. As I said, we take the 25% show community support. We pledge up to 50% of what the project target is, and we deliberately kept this criteria open. We also mapped where the funding was coming from in the city, so we could see those key areas of where the development was happening in the city and which communities may benefit most from the fund. And we only pledge on the all or nothing model. So Crowdfunder offers two different models of funding: flexible funding, which is where the projects receive the money whether they hit their target or not. And we only pledge on all or nothing, which is where they only receive money when they hit their target. And that kind of assures the council and assures us that that project is actually going to happen. So for example, if a project needed to raise £10,000 and they only raised 5,000, there's always that question about whether they actually will happen or not, that project will happen. There's terms and conditions that we ask them to sign up to, which is a bit like a tick box exercise really, but it's 2 sides of A4, very simple, and it kind of just safeguards the money. At the end of the day, this is public money we're distributing, so we need to make sure that the money is being spent on what the projects are telling us the money is going to be spent on. And to kind of help with that, we ask them to submit a progress report a year after the project is closed on Crowdfunder, or whenever they've spent the money, whichever's earliest. And early on as well, we did a lot of promotion through social media events and Pop Plus as well, who represent the voluntary and community sector in the city. And it's great because they offer funding packages and help for funders, and Crowdfunder is part of that. So how does the process work for the council? So a project's uploaded onto the Crowdfunder website and they sign up to the project signs up to our terms and conditions. We check the website weekly to see which new projects have gone up, and we consult with the councillors as well, the local ward councillors. We'll do analysis of the project and mark it against our assessment criteria, and we can ask for additional information as well if we need to. So for example, if they're not specifying that all the beneficiaries of the project are going to be in Plymouth, we can ask those questions. And we wait 5 working days from comments from the councillors as well. So if the project reaches 25% and it meets our criteria, we pledge money. We can pledge up to 50% to a maximum of 30,000. The way that works is that Crowdfunder, at the beginning of each financial year, we transfer a pot of money to Crowdfunder, and they distribute the money on our instruction to projects. And what that does is that cuts out a lot of those conversations with our finance team, with our legal team, because when we were setting up the project, our terms and conditions and our processes and our criteria was all signed off. And we've also recently introduced a climate emergency bonus as well. So if a project is also helping to address climate change, they can receive an additional 25% to a maximum of £15,000. So a project could potentially get £45,000 from us. So that's what happens. They get the fund, great. If they hit their 100% target, we send out a congratulatory letter, a template for the progress report, and we ask them to submit it a year after the project's closed. This is just Crowdfund Plymouth in numbers, just to give you an idea of the impact that the project's having. So in the first 5 years, we pledged on 93 projects. We distributed nearly £500,000 in funds, and what I really like about this is this last bullet point at the bottom. So for every £1 we're pledging, £2.37 is coming from somewhere else. And I think that's the power of crowdfunding and embracing this digital technology, is you're being able to unlock extra funding pots of money, which may not necessarily be out there and available. And we're also finding as well that our average pledge, even though, so for the first couple of years, I think our maximum was 5,000, then it went to 20, now it's 30. But our average pledge is only 5,000. So it kind of shows that we're hopefully tapping into those smaller projects as well. This is the platform. It's just a website if you wanted to have a look at it. It's only a screenshot but if you scroll down further, you'd be able to see the list of projects that we've pledged and the ones which are currently live. This is a map showing the spread of the projects in the first 4 years, so where in the city the projects are coming from, and it's great really because it's showing that there's a lot happening around the city centre, the student area and Devonport of the city, which is where most of the money is coming from and the development is happening. Just a few case studies. I don't think I have long, but Union Corner, it was a derelict building in one of the poorest parts of the city. So we pledged on this project, and now it's a real good community hub. I think the soup kitchen operates out of there, and you can hire the space as well. Collins Park Trust, and this was a green space. The community were wanting to buy the green space to create a community orchard, etc. So that was one we also pledged on. This one I thought I would just include to show that we can pledge on a project more than once as well. So as long as they submit their progress report from the previous project, then and they're doing something different, we're happy to pledge again as well, because it's kind of showing that development of the project and they're going on the journey and we're going with them. And then this, I think, is one of my favourite projects. It's a cafe which is in the city centre, but it's also a dementia hub as well. So it's become a real heart of the community. And also, as well as the cafe underneath, they've got a support drop-in session as well that happens above the cafe. So some lessons learned. It's a new way of distributing money, which we think really works well. Other councils are following our lead. I think we were the first council to kind of do something like this in the country, and I think there's about 35 at least now that are using Crowdfunding UK alone to distribute money. Further culture change is needed. Digital is still new to everyone. This is a new way of thinking for us, for our communities, for our councillors, because it is all about empowering local residents and then coming up with solutions themselves. As I mentioned, we don't dictate at all which projects go on, so they need to come from the communities. There was initially a lot of scepticism and a lot of work as well, groundwork to get the concept approved to get it through. It was a small pot of money. I think in the first year we got £60,000 of SIL neighbourhood portion to distribute, and now it's grown, so we've had to adapt to address that. One of the as you'll know, with digital technology, everything is in the public domain, and we do find that some projects are quite nervous of failing in the public domain, particularly because we do only pledge on all or nothing. If they don't hit their target, they don't get anything. So there is obviously that challenge, and Crowdfunding UK offer technical support to help projects if they are struggling or if they are nervous, kind of helps them to build a campaign. And there's a lot of initial work that projects to gain momentum. For the council, we get pressure to pledge on projects which don't necessarily meet our criteria. It's kind of spread word of mouth. A lot of people know about the fund now, so we do get that pressure. So we've set up quite a clear governance structure and hierarchy of decision making that we go through if we do feel that pressure. It doesn't happen very often, but when we do, we've got something in place to deal with that. And this is just an image from Crowdfunder, kind of giving you an idea of the spread of other councils across the country which are now using this technology. So our next steps, so we're starting to look now at potential for other services in the council. We want to get more money out the door, and as part of that, we've done that relaunch and rebrand of this climate emergency bonus that I mentioned. So projects which are helping to address climate change can also receive additional money. We've also recently reviewed our terms and conditions and our criteria. This is mainly to make it easier for people to know if they'll be eligible for funds, but also we've recently adopted a new local plan as well. So we want to make sure that our priorities are up to date and aligned. And what I'm really keen to do is to kind of grow the ripple effect that we're seeing happening. So we pledged on 2 projects, Borrow Don't Buy and We Are Low Profile, and they've kind of themselves, so Borrow Don't Buy organise crowdfunding meetups, which we get invited to as a council, and we go along and help promote the fund. But people across the city who want to know more about crowdfunding can go to these events and find out more. And We Are Low Profile, which was an arts project, and they've written a blog and also created their own Facebook group as well to kind of grow support for new and emerging projects. And finally, we're also running a competition. So as part of our award for the Engaged Cities Award, we won a grant. And as part of that, we're running a competition which will end in an event later this year. And there's going to be 10 shortlisted projects, which are addressing climate change. And the 10 projects receive coaching from Crowdfunder. And again, it's all about building that resilience, that courage in the community, and empowering them to come up with solutions. That was a very quick introduction to a very big project. I'm happy to answer any questions during or after this webinar. But yeah, anything else? Over to you, Julie.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jess. Really, really good. And thank you to all the speakers for today's presentations. Thank you, Paul, for taking us through virtual consultations. I love the fact you could be walking down the road with your smartphone and then you could see a site, use your QR code or PR code, what it's called, use a little code, and then potentially go around and have a look at the site. And it'd be quite great to think that young children could potentially get involved and we might get more planners and sort of raise a profile of planning. Thank you, Dr. Ray, for taking us through the positives and some of the negatives around digital technology. It's great to think that it could be more transparent and we could have more more time-saving effects, which would be good. It was quite shocking from your presentation that 8 million people in the UK who don't have the internet, 90% suffer from other economic or social disadvantages. And I think it's true what you said, it will take time and education for digital technologies to formally sort of become part of everyday planning. And thank you, Jess, for taking us through the Plymouth Crowdfunder project. It's great to see that for every £1 the communities receive an additional £2.37. It's great to see such practical examples. So thank you all, it's been really good. So we've got a couple of questions. Paul, I'll go to you first if that's okay. And what do you think is one of the most exciting and important benefits of digital technology?
Good question. I think
A big question.
for me, yeah, it's a slightly different one. I thought you were going to ask me. So I think it's I like the reach. I like the way that we can actually, you know, as a designer, sort of explain our projects easier, more. I mean, there's a physical constraint often to the amount of things you actually put in an exhibition, whereas you can run a much kind of larger, more intuitive exercise with you know, and there are more things coming online now. And again, the more things I talk about, then it's then got that that issue with, you know, if there are, was it 8 million people that can't access it, so you've got this thing of how do you bring those in. So so I'm positive, and then slightly sort of thinking of how do we engage with those people, as Dr. Ray set out. I'm not sure that answered your question. It sort of sidestepped it a little bit, but
it's a hard question to try to answer though in sort of a minute, so I'll let you off this one. Dr. Ray, what are your thoughts, please?
Sorry, my internet just broke. Could you please repeat your question?
I appreciate during your presentation you talked about the benefits of digital technology, but I wondered if you could just sum it up into a couple of sentences. What do you think is the most important benefit of digital technologies for planning?
For planning, I think it's make the planning quicker, more efficient, and with less cost, and make it more transparent. But it's a long way. We need to be patient, and we need to adjust our expectation. We should bear in mind that we need to you know, expand money, time, investment, and upskill all the stakeholders.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's might be good to go back to universities and maybe start getting students ready for this sort of a move towards digital technology earlier on. Because I know personally I'm not brilliant with digital technology, but I'll have a go. But I think if we could maybe start getting it into the education system, that might really help. So it could be a potential bonus going forwards. And Jess, same question.
Yeah, just echoing what Dr. Ray said, really. I think it's really powerful in terms of streamlining processes, and that's what we found with Crowdfunder. So having it online, being able to make those quick decisions, and when quick decisions to be made is really powerful. And also as well, in terms of data and digitalization, when you put data sets together, it's quite amazing some of the results you get. And I think digital technology can help bring those our different data together for the benefit of our communities. And also, I think one of the benefits of digital technology as well is it's quite an easy way to get a lot of information out pretty quickly as well. So sometimes when you get a paper document, it's very hard to find what you need. When if it's been broken down into a digital platform, it can become a lot more digestible and a lot more accessible as well.
I think so. I agree with that. Actually, I like the idea that you might have a community who don't understand a project, so you could take them onto site, show them some digital technology and potentially walk them through the development and show them how buildings could look, how light could fall on the buildings, how it could impact on their gardens or on their homes. I just think it could potentially change the discussion around development, and maybe we can go from being, or from some communities being quite anti-development to potentially being quite positive about development and potentially seeing the benefits. So I think it should be quite exciting going forward. So we've got another question. I don't know who it's from, so apologies, but the question is, we are very much pushed for technology, and it's clear that through the white paper that this is being pushed with a rally against site notices on lampposts. But what do we do to ensure that we don't leave those behind who aren't tech savvy or do not want to engage through a screen? So I'll come to you first, Dr. Ray, if I may.
Sorry, that my internet is very, it's like an irony that we want to talk about digital technology and my my internet is very good today. I just missed the last part of the question.
It was, how do we engage with people who aren't tech savvy or who do not want to engage through a screen?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Actually, I raise it as a resistance to change or resistance to, and it's not, it's for everything. We see in the construction industry, we see in the housing, house building industry, that people are not willing to use the digital technology. I think the first and most important thing that we can make them aware of the benefits. I think one thing that apart from the personality of the people, that I had lots of interview with different people, even young generation, they don't like to engage in digital process, because they worried about the privacy, they about the data, how the third party use these kind of concerns that they have. I think first we need to make them aware of how benefits use them, such like successful cases like Jessica raised. I think these successful cases, it's encourage people to use. And the other thing is that meanwhile we need to make the ensure them that how we want to use the data that they provide us or they give us. I think the privacy, the way that we are working with data, I think is important to be transparent as well, and then give them all the information to ensure them.
Brilliant, thank you. And Jess, do you have any points you'd like to raise as well?
Yeah, I think maybe taking advantage of the people who already work in the community. So I was thinking, for example, libraries, and I know our staff are already being trained on people to instruct people on how to use and access services online. And I think I can see those playing an increasingly larger role to kind of, so for example, if you've got a person who isn't online, then they could go to the library and possibly help use like a librarian to help them. I think that's kind of the way, and not just libraries as well, but other community hubs in the cities and in areas. I think if we are going to go in this digital time, we want to make sure we're not leaving anybody behind, and that might be hopefully a way of trying to engage people who are, if they're not digitally, they might be visiting the library and community hubs anyway, as a suggestion.
No, I think that's a really good suggestion. I know my mum personally went down that route of going to the local library to start trying to use the interweb, as she used to call it, and then gradually built up and now has an iPod and seems to be sort of forever on Amazon and ordering everything. So I think it is that gradual sort of learning curve. But how about you, Paul? Paul, I think you're on mute.
Such great first words, ruined as ever. So the whole process of development, from finding your site through sort of GIS to all the way through to sort of delivering the product and maintaining it using sort of BIM, there's less drop off of data you've got. So that'll make it more efficient, which makes it more competitive and easier for people to do things. But through that process, many more things, or all the things really, are being designed in sort of 3D. So the opportunities to present through the easiest window that most people can relate to is like a TV screen. If every project has got an inbuilt amount of three-dimensional sort of development, so it's just the norm and it's not costing people to develop it, then the opportunities to show people a movie of what's happening, that's not necessarily the kind of internet. That's more the kind of things that you could export in terms of here's a little video what it looks like, and even then that can sit in a library, that can sit in a sort of public space. So it's just I think the broadening sort of level of sort of digital understanding, oversights, and what's being built there will be kind of much more kind of valuable, much kind of cheaper, because we're not wasting time every time you're learning at the next stage on a project, which just means if it's the norm, it's easy to put in. And that's my sort of probably architectural perception on it.
No, I think that's a really good idea. I love the fact, personally, I know my mum, if I gave her a plan, she'd be lost. Whereas if she could watch something and fly through a site and look at how the buildings work with the wider area, she would actually understand it, and I think she'd engage much more with planning than she probably does at the moment. When I told her I was going to be a planner, she just seemed like a party planner. And when I explained what I meant, she just sort of, she didn't sort of quite understand what I do and why it works. So I think digital technology, there are lots of benefits there. But we are starting to get quite short time, so I think we're going to have to finish the questions here. But thank you to the speakers, and thank you so much for all your insight, for taking time today for talking to us. And a copy of the video will be sent out to you next week, along with the presentation and further answers to questions from the session, and we'll email those to all participants. And thank you so much again, and thank you to Charlotte Vaughan for pulling everything together. And I hope you enjoyed this session. So thank you again, and thank you.